Hey there, I'm Alan Matthews from Classical Guitar Shed, and in this video we're going to be talking about the long line. This is the kingpin of all phrasing and expression concepts. This is how you can organize your music. It can be what you use to make all of your musical decisions of whether to get louder or softer or slow down or speed up. This works on guitar, it works on every instrument. I learned it from a concert pianist over many years of coaching, and I just know that you are going to enjoy it. If you enjoy it, which I hope you will, subscribe to this channel and click the little bell for the notifications. All right, stick with me because here we go. Great, so what is the long line? The long line is going as long as we possibly can without climaxing. So it is prolonging the action. And so many things do this. Books, like thrillers and good books, every chapter ends in a cliffhanger. You always want to turn the next page. You'll stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning reading it. Same thing with a movie. There's never a good time to get up and pee. There's always one thing leading to the next, even though there are chapters to it. There are many parts. There are sections of movies and books and music. But if you use it well, if you use the long line, if you keep some concepts in mind, some devices and tricks in mind, then you can connect one to the next such that the listener stays engaged, the music stays interesting, it's always moving forward. So what do we have available to us as tools on the guitar or any instrument? We have the basic elements of music. We have the notes are given to us by the music on the page. We also have volume and dynamics. This is getting louder, getting softer, some notes popping out, other ones going into the background. We have rhythm, slowing down, speeding up. We have the placement of individual notes. We also have articulation. This is, am I playing legato or with the notes nice and connected, or am I separating the notes? Am I making the notes very short? Also, am I doing a pull-off or a hammer-on is also an articulation, a slide, a glissando. So these are articulations. And then we also have tone quality. We have very bright tones. We have very round, rich, full tones. And so how we use these. These are our tools that we use for phrasing, and the long line is a concept that can help us decide what to do when. So what do we actually do with this? What do you actually do? Well, some things extend the long line. They extend the action. Other things break the line and stop the action, and then we have to start over again from scratch. So we can do more of the things that extend it and fewer of the things that break it. So let me just give you a couple of little examples. There are many, and so I'll just give you a couple of examples here. But learning these things, that is an ongoing study. And that's what a lot of the phrasing and expression lessons over at Classical Guitar Shed and in the Woodshed program, they come from this concept of the long line. And so they are things that promote the long line. So what are a couple of things that extend the long line? So just a couple of things. One is legato playing. So smoothly connecting notes, that is going to help the music go forward. If we separate every single note, it chops things up. So legato playing is one. We can also play across the bar line. So not stopping at the bar lines on the music, but actually just playing over the bar line and leading the music with our volume and everything else and not slowing down at the bar lines to move over the bar lines. That's going to promote the music to move forward. And within running work, this is the melody, just regular melody stuff. It's not the big moment of the piece, it's the second measure of a phrase. Within the running work, if we can de-emphasize the high notes, then that will stop them from being arrival points in themselves. And so that will motivate the line to move forward as well. And one last thing is that we can listen to the decay of long notes and then start the next bit of music at about the volume that that note has decayed to, if it still is actually ringing. And so that's called the long short, and that is a way that we can also use volume to connect bits. And other things break the long line. So what are these? Well, first, accenting the high note. So if we accent every single little high note in the music, then that is going to create all these false arrival points and is just going to distract us, and it's not going to pull the music forward. Another thing that breaks the long line is doing a pull-off, a descending slur, onto the last note of a measure. That just, it oftentimes will weaken the momentum moving across the bar line into a new harmony. And another one related to what we just said before as well, is starting each new bit of music. So music comes in bits, composers give us bits and we make lines. Starting each little bit of music with a loud note. It sounds like a beginning that way. So instead, we can do something else. We can make it the same or less volume as the stuff that came before. So creating the long line, working on the long line, we really have 4 different levels, at least 4 different levels that we look at this on. So the first is note by note. So we can look at, this is the running work that we were just talking about. How are we connecting one note to the next? What is the volume? What is the connection? What is the tone quality? All of this. So within that, we have the note by note. There's also balance and the notes that come out. Andre Segovia, he didn't bat 1,000 on phrasing stuff, but one thing that he would do sometimes that was really effective was that he would use a really harsh and thin, brittle tone on a melody line whenever the texture underneath it was very thick, and that way it popped out. And so while if you took it in isolation, in that little bitty bit, if you looked at it in just as one measure, you'd say the sound of that melody is actually not very good. You should make that nicer. However, he sacrificed the lovely singing sound for balance and structure. And so instead of making it all muddy, but having a nice sound, instead he brought that melody out so that it was very clear what the melody was and what the melody was not. And so that structurally was more pleasing than just a generally nice sound would have been. Really interesting. So we move note by note within our lines. And this is the running work, the general melodic work of a piece. The next thing is that we take the little musical bits, like we said, and we combine them into longer lines. And so then the way that we do that is to not accent the first note of the bits, to listen to the way that we move from one to the next and connect them as much as possible. Next, we take those bits and move them into larger phrases. We connect those phrases and make them into longer phrases. So instead of an 8-bar phrase, we can have a 16-bar phrase. And the way that we do that is that we really focus on the transition from one phrase to the next, the joinery between those two, and we dovetail them as nicely as possible so that things don't grind to a halt between it. We don't slow down and get quieter between each 8-bar section. That's exhausting for the listener. And then we can take these sections, these larger sections that we've created, and we can connect them to each other. And this is what people do even in Mahler symphonies that are like very large works. You connect one thing to the next as much as possible. It doesn't mean that everything is always creamy and exactly the same. Sometimes contrast is the way to create the forward movement. So the long line can encapsulate everything that we have to work with. Contrast, unity, consistency, novelty. It can do all of these things. It's just as writers and movie editors and directors can use all these different tricks, so can we in what we're doing. We can use all the different things available to us, all the different styles and everything else that we want to in the right place for the right purpose. And so the long line is something that can help us to organize that and to make the decision instead of just looking at the one little moment. So my teacher, Mark Westcott, used to call this the school of ribbons and bows, where you just look at one thing, like Segovia would also, as I said, he doesn't bat a thousand. He loved this note on his guitar, so when he hit it, he'd just let it ring for a while. Well, that's lovely, but within the musical context of the piece, it might not even make sense to have that note slow down and just do a fermato to where it just like time suspends for that note because it sounds good on my guitar. That's not a great decision. That is the school of ribbons and bows, meaning, yes, it looks good in the moment of that one little moment if you took it in isolation, but it doesn't exist that way. It is the larger piece. And so we can instead make our decisions based on a bigger idea. So Mark Westcott also used to say, big musicians, big ideas, small musicians, small ideas. And we're not going to point any fingers or anything like that. It's typically a mixed bag, but we can have bigger ideas. We can think of the longer line and making our pieces more cohesive, more interesting to the users by using our technique in our ear and learning what works and what doesn't to promote the long line. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that it is something useful to you. You can find a lot of lessons over at Classical Guitar Shed on phrasing and expression and different things that you can use to encourage a longer line in your music. If you've enjoyed this, please do subscribe to this channel, and we'll do it again sometime. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.